The great hall of Station Elmara stretched for nearly a mile. Its walls were made of living crystal that hummed with the voices of 1,000 dead civilizations. 73 species sent their representatives here to govern the galaxy, and they had done so for 12,000 cycles. The Galactic Council considered itself eternal. Una Park walked through the center of this hall with her head held high. She was a small woman by any standard. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple tie, and she wore the plain gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. No gold, no decorations, nothing to show her rank except the small blue planet stitched over her heart. The elder races watched her approach with expressions, ranging from boredom to mild disgust. The Velthrani Primarch sat on his floating throne, his long silver body coiled like a snake made of moonlight. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as Una took her place at the speaking circle. The council recognizes the representative from Earth, the automated voice announced. You may speak. Una looked around the chamber. She saw the Ocerons with their insect-like bodies and their constant clicking sounds. She saw the Kathrani with their stone-gray skin and their proud faces. She saw 100 other species who had never once looked at a human without some form of contempt in their eyes. She had served as Earth's ambassador for 22 years. She had smiled through insults. She had remained calm when they called her people primitives. She had kept her voice steady when they laughed at human technology and human customs and human beliefs. Today, she did not smile. I am here to inform the Galactic Council that Earth and all human colonies will be withdrawing from the Galactic Accord, Una said. Her voice was clear and steady. This withdrawal is effective immediately. For a moment, there was silence. Then the Velthrani Primarch made a sound that was something like laughter. Withdrawing. He said, Little human, do you understand what you are saying? No species has ever left the Council. There is nowhere else to go. We are not asking for permission, Una replied. We are informing you of our decision. Oseron delegation did not even bother to look up from their data tablets. One of them made a dismissive clicking sound with his mandibles. The Kathrani representative, a young male named Torvon, leaned forward with something like interest on his gray face. But he said nothing. This is foolishness, the Primarch said. He waved one slender hand as if brushing away an insect. You humans have been part of the Council for what? 2 centuries. That is nothing. You are children playing at civilization? Where will you go? What will you do? You will be forgotten within a single cycle. Una looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the human doctors who had traveled to alien worlds to heal diseases they had never seen before. She thought about the human engineers who had fixed space stations and relay networks without asking for payment. She thought about the human soldiers who had died protecting colonies that belonged to species, who would not even learn their names. She thought about her own daughter, who had asked her once why the other species were so mean to humans. Una had not known what to say. Perhaps you are right, Una said quietly. Perhaps we will be forgotten. She turned and walked out of the great hall. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Not a single voice called out to stop her. Hi, Arbiter. Torvin watched her go. He was young for a Kathrani, only 800 cycles old. He had studied humans as part of his diplomatic training. He had read their history, their literature, their philosophy. He had seen something in them that the elder races refused to see. Now, watching the small woman walk away with such dignity, he felt something cold settle in his chest. It was a feeling he did not recognize at first. It was fear. The withdrawal happened faster than anyone expected. Within 10 standard days, every human ship in Council space had received the order to return home. Cargo vessels abandoned their routes. Medical frigates left orbit around planets they had served for decades. Research stations went dark. Commander Henley stood on the bridge of his ship, the Mercy's Light, and watched the planet Sereth 7 grow smaller in his view screen. He had served this Velthrani colony for 15 years. He had delivered babies and treated plagues and held the hands of dying patients who had no one else. Not once had anyone said thank you. Q, his second officer said softly. We are receiving a transmission from the colony governor. He is asking why we are leaving. Hewin was quiet for a moment. He thought about all the nights he had spent in that colony's hospital. He thought about the children he had saved and the elderly he had comforted. He thought about the governor himself, who had once refused to shake Heian's hand because he found human skin unpleasant. "Do not respond," Heian said. "Set course for Earth." The Mercy's light turned away from Sereth 7 and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the colony continued its daily routines. No one noticed the empty space where the human medical ship had been. No one thought to wonder who would come if there was an emergency. Back on Station Almara, the Galactic Council went about its business. New trade agreements were signed. Old disputes were argued. The Valthrani Primarch gave a speech about the bright future of the galaxy. No one mentioned the humans. 3 months passed before anyone realized that something was wrong. The first reports came from the outer colonies. Medical supplies were running low. Ships were being attacked by pirates. Relay stations were failing. The Council sent messages to Earth asking for assistance. There was no reply. They sent more messages. More urgent this time? Silence. The Great Galactic Council. Rulers of 73 species in countless worlds had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen only a small, young, primitive race. They had taken everything humans offered and given nothing in return except contempt. And now, in the vast emptiness of space, they were beginning to understand what they had lost. But by then, it was already too late. The plague came to Sereth 7 in the quiet season. It started with a cough. Then came the fever. Then the bleeding that would not stop. Within 2 weeks, the hospitals were full. Within a month, they were turning patients away to die in the streets. Governor Malak stood in his office and stared at the reports on his desk. The numbers did not make sense to him. His people were dying by the thousands, and he did not know why. "Where are the human doctors?" he demanded. "They always come when there is sickness." His assistant, a young Valthrani female, looked at him with confusion in her 4 eyes. "The humans left, Governor. Do you not remember? They withdrew from the council 8 months ago." Malak felt something cold move through his silver body. He did remember now. He remembered laughing when he heard the news. He remembered saying that the galaxy would be better off without those strange, soft-skinned creatures who were always poking their noses into other species' business. "Send a message to the council," he said. "Tell them we need medical assistance immediately." The message went out. The council received it and forwarded it to the Valthrani homeworld. The Valthrani homeworld sent it to their medical division. The medical division looked at the disease and found that they had no cure. The cure had been developed by human doctors 20 years ago. It had been shared freely with every colony that had a human. Its medical station, Sereth 7 had. Never bothered to keep copies of the human research. The plague burned through the colony for 6 terrible months. When it finally died out on its own, 30% of the population was gone. Governor Malak survived. He wished he had not. Every night, he dreamed of a human doctor named Heian Li, who had once saved his own son's life. He had never thanked the man. Far across the galaxy, the Acyllarian trade lanes were falling into chaos. For 50 years, small human patrol vessels had quietly escorted merchant convoys through dangerous space. The Osarans had complained about this constantly. They said the human ships were ugly. They said human weapons were primitive. They said they did not need protection from creatures who still breathed oxygen like animals. Now the human ships were gone. And the pirates had noticed. Captain Yoongi Han had commanded one of those patrol vessels. His ship, the Steadfast, had been small and old, and nothing special to look at. But he and his crew had escorted over 2,000 convoys without losing a single one. They had fought pirates and raiders and worse things that lived in the dark spaces, between stars. The Osarans had never invited him to their stations. They said his presence made them uncomfortable. Yoongi was home now on Earth, working in a shipyard. He heard the news about the Osiran trade lanes and felt nothing. His sister had died defending in a siren convoy 7 years ago. The Osarans had refused to send her body home because they did not want a human corpse on their ships. Let them burn, Yoongi thought, and he went back to work. On Station Almara, the council was beginning to argue. The Velthrani blamed the Osarans for driving away the humans. The Osarans blamed the Kathrani. The Kathrani blamed everyone. Old alliances were breaking. Old friendships were dying. High Arbiter Torvin spent his nights going through records that no one had bothered to read before. He found things that made him sick with shame. Human engineers had maintained 62% of the Council's deep space relay network. They had done this work for free, asking only for basic supplies and occasional permission to study alien technology. The Council had given them neither thanks nor recognition. Human xenobiologists had cataloged and treated over 400 alien diseases. They had shared all their research openly, holding nothing back. The Council had classified this research as primitive, but occasionally useful. Human peace ships had mediated 900 territorial disputes in the outer systems. They had prevented wars that could have killed billions. The Council had called them meddlers and troublemakers. Torvin found a report from 60 years ago. A human diplomat named Minji Kong had presented a detailed analysis of everything humanity contributed to the galaxy. She had asked, politely, for the Council to consider treating humans with more respect. The report had been filed without being read. Someone had written a note on the cover, "Human complaints. Not important." Torvin found Minji Kong's current address in the database. She had returned to Earth 5 years before the withdrawal. She had known what was coming. She had tried to warn them. He sent her a message, asking for a conversation. Her reply came 3 days later. It was only 2 words. Too late. The breaking point came with the earthquake on Kethra Prime. The Kethrani homeworld had always been geologically unstable. Earthquakes were common, and the Kethrani had learned to live with them. But they had also learned to rely on human emergency response teams. Admiral Temencho had commanded those teams. His fleet of rescue ships had been the best in the galaxy. They could reach any disaster zone within hours. They carried food, medicine, shelter, and hope. When the great earthquake struck Kethra Prime, killing millions in the first few minutes, the survivors looked to the sky and waited for the human ships to come. They did not come. Temo was on Earth, teaching young cadets how to fly rescue missions. He heard about the earthquake and closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered the last earthquake on Kethra Prime 18 years ago. His teams had saved 2 million lives. The Kethrani government had not sent a single message of thanks. "Sir," one of his students asked, "should we not help them?" Taman looked at the young woman. She had kind eyes and a good heart. She reminded him of himself, long ago, when he still believed that kindness would be repaid with kindness. "We are no longer part of their galaxy," he said quietly. "They made that clear. We will build our own way now." The student nodded, but she did not look happy. None of them looked happy. Humans were not built for cruelty. They did not enjoy watching others suffer, but they had learned, after 200 years of trying, that some lessons could only be taught through pain. On Kethra Prime, 30 million people died, waiting for help that would never come. And still, the Council did not understand. 2 years had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy was bleeding. High Arbiter Torvin stood before the Council with a report that had taken him 18 months to complete. His stone-gray face was tired. His eyes had lost their brightness. He had seen too much truth in too short a time. "I have counted what we have lost," he said. His voice echoed in the great hall, which seemed emptier now than it once had. 12 species had stopped sending representatives. They could no longer afford the journey. The Velthrani Primarch sat in his floating throne, but he did not look proud anymore. His silver body had grown dull. His 4 eyes were filled with something that might have been fear. "Speak then," the Primarch said. "Tell us what your research has found." Torvin activated his display. Numbers and charts filled the air above the speaking circle. They told a story of slow collapse. "The relay network is failing," Torvin said. "Human engineers maintained most of it. Without them, we lose communication with the outer colonies every day. Within 5 years, we will be cut off from 40% of our territory." He changed the display. "Disease is spreading on 17 worlds. Human doctors developed cures for most of these illnesses. We have the data, but we do not have the skills to produce the medicine. Our own medical science fell behind because we relied on humans to do the work. Another change. Piracy has increased by 800%. Human patrol ships protected trade routes that we considered unimportant. Now those routes are controlled by raiders. 3 species have already reported famines because supply ships cannot reach them.
Oh.
The council was silent. Even the Ocerons had stopped clicking. Torvin looked at them all with something like pity. These were the rulers of the galaxy. These were the elder races who had built empires and conquered worlds. And they had never noticed that a small, young species had been holding everything together. But this is not the worst part, Torvin said quietly. He changed the display one more time. A simple list appeared. Names and dates and places. This is a record of every time humans helped us over the past 200 years, he said. They responded to 3,000 natural disasters. They mediated 900 conflicts. They provided free medical care to over 2 billion individuals across 60 species. They shared technology. They shared knowledge. They shared everything. He paused. And this, he said, is a record of every time we thanked them. The second list was empty. The silence in the great hall was complete. Even the living crystal in the walls had stopped humming. Dr. Nario had been one of the finest doctors in the human medical corps. She had spent 40 years healing aliens on distant worlds. She had learned the biology of 30 different species. She had saved lives that no one else could save. She had also kept a journal. On Earth. In her small apartment overlooking the ocean, she read through the old entries sometimes. They told a story she was still trying to understand. Year 1. Arrived at Station Valora. The patients are afraid of me. They say humans look strange. I tell them I am here to help. Slowly, they begin to trust me. Year 5. Treated my 1,000th patient today. A young Kethrani child with a bone disease. His mother cried when I told her he would live. She did not say thank you, but her tears were enough. Year 10. The hospital director told me that humans should not be allowed in the senior medical wing. Our presence makes the wealthy patients uncomfortable. I moved my office to the basement. Year 20. Discovered a cure for Velthrani blood fever. Shared it with the Council Medical Board. They published the research under an Osiren name. When I complained, they said humans could not be credited with major discoveries. It would look bad. Year 30. My assistant died today. Her name was Jimin, and she was 26 years old. She caught a disease from a patient she was treating. The hospital refused to hold a memorial service because she was human. Year 40. I am going home. I have given everything I have. I do not regret the lives I saved, but I cannot do this anymore. Nari closed the journal and looked out at the sea. Earth was beautiful. She had forgotten how beautiful it was. For 40 years she had lived in gray stations and sterile hospitals, surrounded by people who saw her as less than nothing. Now she was home. Now she was free. The council's messages came every day. They begged for doctors to return. They offered payment this time, and recognition and respect. Nari did not answer. Some things could not be bought. Back on Station Almara, Torvin was having a private meeting with the Velthrani Primarch. The great silver creature looked smaller than he remembered. It's tired. We made a mistake, the Primarch said. It was the first time Torvin had ever heard him admit such a thing. Yes, Torvin agreed. We did. We must bring them back. We must find a way. Torvan shook his head slowly. I do not think that is possible. I've studied humans carefully. They are not like us. They do not hold hatred in their hearts. But they remember. They remember every insult, every dismissal, every time we made them feel small and worthless. Then what do? We survive, Torvin said. If we can, we learn to do for ourselves what they did for us. We become better than we were. The Primarch was quiet for a long time. Can we? Can we become better? Torvin looked at the great hall through the window. He saw the empty seats where human diplomats had once sat. He saw the dark screens where human ships had once reported their positions. He saw a galaxy that had taken everything from a kind and gentle people and given nothing in return. I do not know, he said honestly. but we must try. It is the only way to honor what they gave us." The Primarch made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. "Honor," he said. "We do not even know the meaning of the word." Torvin could not argue with that, so he said nothing at all, and in the great hall of Station Almara, the crystal walls continued to hum with the voices of dead civilizations. Soon they might be joined by a few more. 5 years after the withdrawal, the Galactic Council sent its first official delegation to Earth's borders. The ship was the finest the Velthrani could build. It carried representatives from 12 species, including the Primarch himself. They brought gifts of rare metals and precious stones. They brought formal apologies written on sacred documents. They brought promises of change. The human border station did not respond to their hails. They waited for 3 days. The station hung in space, dark and silent, like a sleeping giant. Sensors showed that it was fully operational. Power readings were normal. Life signs were present. The humans were there. They simply did not answer. General Dojan Beek watched the alien ship from his command center. He was an old man now, with white hair and deep lines on his face. He had spent 30 years of his life defending alien colonies from threats they could not handle themselves. He had lost friends. He had lost family. He had lost parts of himself that he would never get back. "Sir," his communications officer said, "they are requesting permission to approach." "Deny the request," Doyan said calmly. "They say they have apologies from the council. They say they want to talk about bringing humanity back." Doyan looked at the screen. He could see the Velthrani ship, all curves and silver light. Beautiful, arrogant, just like everything else they made. "Deny the request," he said again. "They can wait." The delegation waited for 2 more weeks. They sent messages every hour. They played recordings from council leaders, begging for forgiveness. They broadcast images of suffering worlds and dying colonies. The border station remained silent, finally. The Primarch did something he had never done before in his 1,200 years of life. He begged. "Please." His voice came through the communication system. "Please, we know we made mistakes. We know we treated you badly. But innocent people are dying. Children are dying. Is this who you are? Is this what humans have become?" For a long moment there was no response. Then a single human voice came through the speakers. It was Hannah Shin, the woman who had been Earth's final liaison before the withdrawal. Her voice was calm and cold.
"You ask if this is who we are?" she said.
"Let me tell you who we were." Primarch leaned forward, hope flickering in his 4 eyes. "We were the ones who came when you called," Hannah continued. "We were the ones who healed your sick and fed your hungry. We were the ones who stood between your children and the darkness. We did this for 200 years. We asked for nothing except to be treated as equals. And we," the Primarch began. "You laughed at us," Hannah cut him off. "You called our ships ugly. You called our medicine primitive. You called our people animals. When our doctors cured your diseases, you put other names on the research. When our soldiers died defending your colonies, you refused to send their bodies home. When our diplomats asked for basic respect, you filed their requests without reading them." The Primarch was silent. "We gave you everything," Hannah said, "and you gave us nothing but contempt. So no, Primarch, we are not punishing you. We are not seeking revenge. We are simply done. We are done giving our hearts to people who see us as less than nothing. But the children," the Primarch whispered, "the innocent ones, who never hurt you." "Yes," Hannah said, and for the first time, her voice held something like sadness. "That is the tragedy, is it not? The innocent always suffer for the sins of the powerful. Your children are dying because you taught them that humans did not matter. Our children grew up being told they were worthless by the galaxy they served. We all have wounds, Primarch. We are simply choosing to heal ours alone." The channel closed. The Velthrani delegation returned to council space, empty-handed. The Primarch did not speak for 3 days after his return. When he finally addressed the council, his voice was hollow. "They will not come back," he said. "They do not hate us. That might be easier. Instead, they simply do not care anymore. We killed something in them, something precious, and I do not think it can be restored. Torvin watched the Primarch slump in his throne. The great leader of the Velthrani, ruler of 1,000 worlds, looked like a broken old creature waiting to die, and perhaps that was what they all were now on Earth. Hannah Shin sat in her garden and listened to the birds sing. Her daughter brought her tea, and they sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that no alien world had ever matched. Was it hard? Her daughter asked. Talking to them? Hannah thought about it for a moment. She remembered all the years she had spent smiling at aliens who despised her. She remembered keeping her voice steady when they insulted her people. She remembered crying alone in her quarters after meetings where she had been treated like an animal. No, she said finally. It was not hard. It was the easiest thing I've ever done. Her daughter nodded. She was young, born on Earth, never having experienced the casual cruelty of the Council species. To her, the galaxy beyond their borders was just a dark place full of strangers. That was probably for the best. General Doyan Beek retired from the border service 6 months later. He moved to a small town in the mountains, far from the stars, far from the memories. He grew vegetables and raised chickens and tried not to think about the friends he had buried in alien soil. Sometimes, late at night, he would look up at the sky and wonder if any of it had been worth it. 200 years of service. Thousands of human lives spent defending people who hated them. He could never find an answer. But he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would never make that mistake again. They would build their own future now, among the stars, without the burden of ungrateful masters. And if the galaxy burned, it would burn without them. 10 years after humanity withdrew, the Galactic Council existed only in name. The Great Hall of Station Almara was dark now. The living crystal had stopped humming. 40 of the 73 species no longer sent representatives. Some had simply lost contact. Others had turned inward, fighting their own battles for survival. A few had gone silent in ways that suggested there was no one left to speak. The Velthrani Primarch had died 3 years earlier. Some said it was age. Others said it was shame. His last words, spoken to Torvin alone, had been simple. Tell them I am sorry. Torvin had never delivered the message. There was no one left who wanted to hear it. 3 species had gone extinct in the past decade. The Morvani had depended entirely on human medical technology to survive their harsh homeworld. Without regular treatments, their population had collapsed within 5 years. The Selthi had been a small, peaceful race who relied on human protection from their aggressive neighbors. When the human ships left, the neighbors had not been peaceful. The third extinction was the hardest. The Osarans, proud and ancient, had watched their trade empire crumble into nothing. Piracy had grown into full warfare. Colony fought against colony. The great Osiran fleets that had once ruled the trade lanes had destroyed each other in a civil war that lasted for years. A few thousand Osarans survived on scattered stations. They were refugees now, begging for scraps from species that had once feared them. On Earth, humanity knew about all of this. They had eyes in the darkness. They watched the galaxy tear itself apart, and they felt many things. Sadness, regret, a quiet, heavy grief for what might have been, but they did not go back. President Sun Wuzhang stood at the window of his office, looking out at the city below. Seoul had changed in the past decade. It was greener now, cleaner, full of life in ways it had not been before. Humanity had turned its energy inward, building a civilization that served its own people instead of ungrateful strangers. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, the delegation has arrived." Sun Wu nodded and turned from the window. This meeting had been a long time coming. The delegation was not from the council. It was from a coalition of younger species, races who had joined the galactic community only recently. They had never held power. They had never insulted humanity. In fact, many of them had been treated almost as badly as the humans themselves. Their leader was a young Kathroni female named Sira. She had been born after the withdrawal. She knew the old council only through stories, through the records of cruelty and arrogance that her parents had shared with her. "Thank you for seeing us," Sira said. Her stone-gray face was calm, but her eyes were bright with hope. "We know that you have every reason to refuse." Sun Wu gestured for her to sit. His advisors gathered around the table. Dr. Nario, retired but still sharp. Admiral Jisoo Park, Yuna's nephew, who had grown up hearing stories of humanity's thankless service. Mingi Kung, the old trade liaison who had predicted everything and been ignored. "Tell us why you are here," Sun Wu said. Sira took a deep breath. "We are here because our people are dying. Not from plague or war, but from loneliness. The council is gone. The elder races have abandoned us, or turned against us. We have nowhere to go and no one to turn to." She paused. "But we are not here to ask you to save us. We know what the council did to you. We know that you owe us nothing. We are here because we want to offer something instead." Sun Wu raised an eyebrow. "What could you offer us?" "Ourselves," Sarah said simply. "We want to join you, not as servants or dependents, but as partners. We want to build something new together, something better than what came before." The room was silent. Sun Wu looked at his advisors. Nari's eyes were wet with tears she was trying not to shed. Jisoo looked thoughtful. Minji's face was unreadable. "Why us?" Sun Wu asked finally. "Why would you trust humans after everything that happened?" Sira smiled. It was a sad smile, full of understanding. "Because you left," she said. "Any species that wanted power would have stayed and fought. Any species that wanted revenge would have watched us suffer and laughed. But you did neither. You simply walked away. You chose peace over victory. You chose healing over hatred." She leaned forward. "The elder races always said that humans were weak. They said you were too soft, too emotional, too attached to ideas like kindness and mercy. But we watched you, President Zhang. We watched you help our enemies while they spat in your faces. We watched you die for people who would not even learn your names. And when you finally had enough, you did not destroy them. You simply stopped giving." Sira's voice grew quiet. "That is not weakness. That is strength we cannot even imagine. And it is the kind of strength we want to stand beside." The silence stretched on. Sun Wu looked at his hands. They were old hands now, marked with age. He had spent his entire life serving humanity, first as a soldier, then as a politician. He had seen the best and worst of what people could be. He thought about Yuna Park, who had walked out of the council hall with her head held high. He thought about Hyen Li, who had healed alien children without asking for thanks. He thought about all the humans who had given everything and received nothing. They had not withdrawn to punish the galaxy. They had withdrawn to find themselves again, to remember who they were when they were not being treated like animals. And now, 10 years later, someone had finally seen them clearly. "We do not want an empire," Sun Wu said slowly. "We never did. We just wanted friends." Sira nodded. "You know, that is why we trust you." Sun Wu looked at his advisors one more time. Nari was crying openly now. Jisoo gave a small nod. Mingi, the old woman who had warned the council so many years ago, finally smiled. "Then let us build something together," Sun Wu said. "Not a council that rules from above. Not an empire that takes without giving. Something new. Something worthy of the people we lost." He reached across the table and took Sira's hand. "Welcome to humanity," he said. "We have been waiting for you." And in that moment, in a small room, on a small planet that the galaxy had once dismissed as primitive and unimportant, something new was born. It was not an alliance of power or fear. It was an alliance of hope. The old council had fallen. The elder races had learned the cost of their arrogance, but in the silence where humanity had once withdrawn, a new voice was beginning to speak. And this time, the galaxy would learn to listen.